Testing, testing, one, two, three. Yep, that works. All right, we might as well start then, because it's been 4 minutes since it should have started, but it's okay. Hello, welcome back to today's beginner lesson. Today we're going to be talking about how to play the endgame. And for those who weren't here last week, I'm Naranjan. I'm the Wellbeing Inclusions Officer for Chess Society. Over here we've got Charlie, who's our president, and Josh will be here anytime soon. He should be here, but he's not. It's okay. Today, essentially, we're starting at like the very fundamentals, pretty much. We're starting at the very basics of the endgame, and hopefully later on in the weeks we can improve on it. It's like, are any of you like engineering students? No? That's okay. Because like, if you're like trying to build a building, for example, you got to build a good strong base. You got to build a strong base first before you can build the building on top of it. So that's what today's for. We're building the base of your chess knowledge. So we're trying to understand what the difference between a checkmate and a stalemate is. And also today we're going to look at some basic checkmate patterns as well. And at the end, you guys are going to be like a teacher as well. So you guys are going to like try and teach yourself and teach everyone else. But that's at the end. So we'll start right at the beginning. What actually is the endgame? All right, I've been saying before, like, today we're going to be talking about the endgame, but what actually is it? And essentially, if you were here last week, you might remember that I said that a chess game is split into 3 sections. So you've got the opening, you got the middle game, and you got the end game. So the end game, it's in the name. It's like right towards the end of a chess game, pretty much. There's like a definition of it, which I don't really agree with, but there it is. Basically, it's towards the end of the game where both queens have been traded, or if only the queens and kings remain on the board. Essentially, what that means is that if you've got a position that's like, if there's not that many pieces left on the board, or if there's no queens on the board, then it's an endgame. So, for example, this right here, this is an endgame because, you've got just pawns and kings left on the board, which is not that many pieces, so it's considered an endgame. What I find really stupid is that this is also an endgame. The whole point of an endgame is that there's not that many pieces left on the board. But just because the actual definition says that both queens have been traded, this counts as an endgame for some reason, even though there's a lot of pieces. But that's a thing for another time. Essentially, the endgame, why we're learning it first, pretty much. I've already told you before that a chess game is split into 3 sections, so the opening, middle game, end game. Why are we starting at the end? And the reason is because I've said before that in an end game, there's not that many pieces left on the board. So anything that you learn about the end game is theoretical. It means that it's already been solved pretty much. Because if you take the opening, for example, there's going to be a lot of different pieces on the board. So there's going to be a bunch of different variations, a bunch of different tactics you can do. There's like a million chess positions in the opening and the middle game. So it's difficult, But the end game, because there's not that many pieces left on the board, it's sort of been solved, right? And so, like it says here, opening theory and middle game ideas constantly change across different eras, whereas endgame theory never changes. So there might be like chess books, for example, on the endgame from like the 1800s, for example, and it would still be relevant today because, as I said before, endgame theory never changes. Whereas like different strategies in the opening or in the middle game, they change over like the different periods of time. So, for example, now everything is sort of like it's sort of like very different to how you would play the opening and middle game back in the day of like the 1800s pretty much. And there's a little fun fact over here that the Russian school of chess, they thought that the endgame was like the most important bit of chess. So all the kids, hello. So all the kids that like came to the Russian school of chess, they will all be like, all the teachers would say, you got to learn the endgame first, right? That's the most important bit. So they wouldn't teach anything else. They wouldn't teach anything else to these little kids. They would just teach the endgame. So yeah, fun fact. I told you before that our learning objectives was all about checkmates and like the end game pretty much. So we're starting right from the beginning. What actually is a checkmate? You must have heard me say checkmate like a million times. Some of you might not know what it is. So essentially what a checkmate is that it's the goal of chess pretty much. The goal of chess is to checkmate your opponent's king. And what that means is that you're trying to put as much and much pressure on the opponent's king as possible until there comes a position where the enemy king has no other squares it can move, otherwise it would like run into another one of your attacks. And that's it. That's the game over pretty much. If you got checkmate on the board, that's it, you've won. So obviously it's split into two bits. You got check and mate. So check is basically where you attack your king, your opponent's king pretty much. And the mate means that there's no escape from the check. So it becomes checkmate, right? Does that make sense? Yeah? So another thing that you need to remember is that it can't be checkmate without it being check. So what that means is that if your opponent's king isn't being attacked or if it isn't in check, then it can never be checkmate, right? It's only checkmate if like you've made a move that directly attacks your opponent's king, as in if you've like put your opponent in check pretty much. And we'll go through like a bunch of different examples so that it's like sort of cemented in your heads what a checkmate is. Rather than me explaining it, it's like a lot easier to understand it if you see it on the board. Just a reminder that a check is basically like a direct attack on your opponent's king or your opponent directly attacking your king. So for example, let's look at this position on the left. Remember that bishops move diagonally. So in this position, this bishop is attacking this king, meaning that our king is in check, right? And if we look at this position, if we look at this position, this queen, remember, it moves up, down, left to right, and diagonally. So in this position, this queen attacks this king, and so we are in check. If we're playing as white, we're in check, right? And this is fundamental to understanding what a checkmate is, because, like I said before, you can't have a checkmate without it being check. And remember that I've just said before, but it can't be checkmate without it being check. So if you are trying to go for a checkmate on your opponent's king, you need to make sure that the opponent's king can't get out of check. What that means is that essentially the king can't move away from our attack. It can't capture the piece that's doing the checking or blocking the check with another piece or pawn. So essentially I've just read them out to you, but there's 3 ways you can get out of a check. So the first one is moving the king away from the attack. What this means is that, let's look at this position actually. So remember that rooks, they move up and down, left and right. So they also attack that same way as well. So this rook is attacking the black king, so it's in check, right? So if we want to get out of that check, then we can move the king, right? We can move the king out of the way of the attack of the rook, right? Does that make sense? Yeah? Another way you can get out of check is to capture the piece that is doing the checking. So kind of similar to the position that we had before, except this black rook is over here, and it's able to capture this rook that's doing the checking. So by taking this rook, that means that the black king is out of check, right? It's not checkmate in that position. And the final way you can get out of a check is to block the check with another piece or pawn. What that means is that, remember that this rook is checking this king. So if we find some way to block that attack, or what we like to call interpose that attack, we can do that, and that stops the attack on the king. So in this position, you would bring the rook and place it over here, so that stops the rook's sight on the king, and that's not checkmate in that position. It would just be check. And we're going to do a little bit of an activity after this. So just a reminder that how we escape checks, those 3 methods. How can we move the king out of the check in this position? No? Okay, I'm seeing shaking of the heads, so no, we can't. That's correct. So can we capture the bishop that's doing the checking? No? That's correct. And can we block the bishop's sight on the king? We can, yes. There's actually 4 different ways we can do that. 3 of them are good, 1 of them, if you do that, I don't know what to tell you, but yeah. Yeah, so we can block the attacking piece's pawn's sight on the king, yes. And we can do that by move the knight over here to c3, we can move it to d2, we can move the bishop to prevent the check, or we can move the queen, but that's the kind of like an idiotic move because the queen's more valuable, so you don't want to trade something that's less valuable with something that's more valuable. We'll get into like piece, like material later on during the year, but like just like a tidbit of information, don't trade your queen for a bishop unless you have like a really good reason to, but in this position there's absolutely no reason to. Now we can do our activity. Yeah, I forgot that I had this slide up, but sure. We're going to do an activity called check or checkmate, where essentially you guys are going to like try and figure out if the position is a check or checkmate. And you're going to use those 2 questions that you asked yourselves last time to try and figure that out. So, question 1. Check or checkmate? Checkmate? Yeah? Okay. How come?
It can't move anywhere, but it can't move down, the king will capture it.
Okay,
It can't move diagonal on either side, and it can't move across with the rook.
that's correct. Nice. That is a checkmate. So just a reminder, because we're recording this as well, the king can't move out of the check because, like you said, it can't move sideways because the rook attacks it. Can't move down, I guess, diagonally or down because the king's there, the white king's there. So we can't move the king out of check. We can't capture the rook because there's no way to capture it, I guess. I don't really know how to explain that. It's kind of simple, I guess. And we can't block the attacking pieces or pawn's sight on the king because, once again, there's nothing to block the attack on the black king. So, yeah, well done. That is a checkmate. It is checkmate, yes. Congratulations. Next one. Is it a check or is it a checkmate? It's a check. How come?
Because the king can move to the h8 square.
It can. That's correct. Nice. That is a check. So, just for the people on the recording, the king is in check, not checkmate, because it moves to the h8 square. We can move the king out of the check, so it's a check. This is a check. And next question. I feel like it's a little bit more easier, but you guys can shout out check or checkmate. You guys are so shy. It's checkmate.
No?
That's,
Oh,
yeah,
no.
it is a check. Because remember that this queen, it's not defended by anything. It's okay, don't worry. That's why I did it, to like trick people, I guess. But now that you made that mistake, I'm sure you won't do that again, I guess. Yeah, hopefully not. But just for the people on the recording, that is a check because the king can capture the piece that is checking the king, right? This is a check. Next question, check or checkmate?
Can you kill your own pawns?
We can't kill your own pawns, unfortunately. Checkmate? How come? Just a guess? Okay. Let's go through the questions then. Can we move the king out of the check? No? because, like you said before, we can't gobble our own pawns. So can we capture the piece that's doing the checking on the king? Can we take this rook by any chance? Can we capture the rook? Yeah.
How does the king move?
So the king can move any square in one direction pretty much. So let's say if the king was on this square, right, where my blue dot is, it can move up, down, left and right, diagonally, but all in one square. Oh, that's the previous question. I think we should have, do you have the diagram?
I don't have the sheet with me.
You don't have a sheet? Oh, okay, that's fine. Oh, yeah, you've got it, okay. Okay. Do you need that? Is that okay?
What is it?
It's like a sheet that tells you like how all the pieces move, if you want it, of course. We normally have like a suitcase with all of our materials in it, but we didn't bring that today, so sorry about that. But yeah, can we capture the piece or pawn that's doing the checking on the king? So can we take this rook? No? No? Okay, we can't because this rook can't move that way, I guess. The pawns don't capture this way, they move down towards the first rank if they're playing as black. And can we block the attack on the king? No? We can't because there's no piece or pawn that can move to this square. And so it's a checkmate. Because the king can't move anywhere, you can't block, and you can't take the rook, so it's checkmate. This is what we like to call a back rank checkmate. We'll get onto why it's called back rank later on, but like just a tidbit of information again. It's a back rank checkmate. Next question. Can we no. Check or checkmate? I heard somebody whisper it. You guys are so shy. It's okay.
Check.
It's a check. Okay, how come?
Because you can next to the 2 points.
So, this square?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. So, it is a check, that's correct. We can move the king out of the check to h7. So, well done. Congratulations. This is a check. Next question. I think we have 2 more or 1 more of these. Check or checkmate? Check. How come?
Because the bishop can take the rook.
That's correct. Nice. So just for the people on the recording, it is a check. It's not a checkmate. It's not back rank checkmate because this bishop over here moves diagonally. Remember, bishops move diagonally. And it can take the rook, right? So it stops the attack. Remember that we can capture the piece or pawn that is checking the king with the bishop. It's check. This is a check. Ah, this is our last one. Okay. Check or checkmate?
Check.
Check. How come?
Could sacrifice the queen.
Okay. So, how would you do that? How would you sacrifice the queen?
You move the queen to f8.
That is correct. It is f8. Nice. So, that is a check. For the people recording, it is a check. We can't move the king out of check because it's basically kind of like a back rank mate. Not really a back rank mate, but the king can't move anywhere. We can't capture the piece that's checking the king because this queen or the pawns or the king, it can't attack the rook, so we can't capture it. But we can block the attacking pieces or pawn sight on the king if we move this queen to f8. That stops the rook from attacking the king. Hello. But yeah, that is a check. Congratulations. That's the end of that activity. If you guys are getting bored, that's okay. There's a lot of them, I know. But just a reminder that not every game ends in checkmate. You know, games can end in a draw. They can still be won, but not by checkmate as well. So, an example of that being a resignation. So essentially, if you think that your position on the board is completely lost, and you have no hope, you have no energy to play, to like keep playing the game, you can offer a resignation to your opponent. Essentially, what that means is you're basically voluntarily ending the game. You're admitting that you can't win the position, and so you lose pretty much. The way to do this in person is to, so if you have a king on the board, you just like knock it over, I guess. You knock it over, you like lean it to the side, and you say you resign. And either you like put out your hand, like shake your opponent's hand, and say I resign. Or if you don't want to do that for like whatever reason, so like COVIDs or cultural reasons, whatever, you can nod, you can bow, you can put your hands together like this. Yeah, pretty much you can like resign the game. Online, there's like a little resignation button. On chess.com, it will be like to the right of the chessboard. On Lichess, I don't know. But yeah, you can click the resign button to end the game.
How frequently does this happen?
How frequently does it happen? So in beginner games, I often tell my students never to resign, because literally in the beginning of in like the beginner games, literally anything can happen pretty much. So you may think that you're in a completely losing position, but somehow your opponent might do something very stupid and you can still win the game, you know? But how often does it happen in like intermediate games, advanced games? It starts to happen quite a lot because later on, like intermediate advanced players, they kind of know if their opponent's like capable of winning the game, capable of doing all the moves that will win the game pretty much. So in like the higher rated games, if they know that it's like completely winning for the opponent, they will just resign. And remember back to how I said the endgames are theoretical, meaning that if you get to an endgame that's completely lost, they're more than likely like their opponent. You know that your opponent's like a lot more capable of delivering checkmate. They're not going to make mistakes, you know. So in endgames like that, then it's like very common to see resignation. But yeah, thank you for the question. If you guys like have any other questions as well, then you're more than welcome to interrupt me and ask. But yeah, another way you can win a game or lose a game is what's called flagging or timing out. So essentially, a lot of people, they like to play with a clock with it, and like when they're playing a chess game, they like to have their like moves timed pretty much. So if you run out of time, then you've lost pretty much. If your opponent loses, because if your opponent runs out of time, then they've lost as well. The reason why it's called flagging is another fun fact. The reason why it's called flagging is because back in the old days when like chess clocks, they were all like a bit older, they would used to literally have like a little flag on the side that would drop once the opponent's time runs out or if your time runs out. And so that's why it's called flagging. Like there will literally be like like an actual flag inside of the chess clock that would drop whenever someone's time runs out. So yeah, when a player's clock runs out of time during a chess game, they lose the game. If your time runs out, you lose the game unless your opponent doesn't have enough material to checkmate. So what this means is that if you run out of time, but there's not enough like pieces on the board to checkmate your opponent's king, so let's say there's like just one bishop or like I don't really know what the material is. Do you remember? So like if you've run out of time, but there's not enough material to checkmate.
You need enough material that it's possible to force a checkmate for yourself. So if you had a king and a bishop and nothing else, it's a draw if the other person fights because you couldn't checkmate anyway.
Right.
But if you had a knight and a bishop, you win.
Okay. So if you're in a position where it's like capable of checkmating, but you don't, then you've lost, right? Yeah. But if you don't have the pieces necessary to checkmate the opponent's king, just like a king and a bishop, for example, like you said, you're not able to checkmate with just a king and a bishop. So that's a draw. And yeah, draw, like I said before, where both players reach a position in a chess game where no player is able to win. Essentially, what this means is that, like you said before, that if there's like a king or a bishop on the board, it's literally not possible at all to checkmate with that. So the game won't end in a draw, pretty much. There might also be a position where there's like absolutely nothing happening in the game, and like both opponents might like not have the energy to keep making moves, or like they're just very tired, or they just can't be bothered to play the game. and it's like completely equal, you know. Then they can draw by agreement. So, like how we said that there's like opponents can resign, you can also like draw pretty much. So you can put out your hand and ask the opponent if it's a draw, like if they want a draw. They can either say no, no draw. We had that in our tournament. We had a tournament yesterday.
You're out, mate.
Like we played a tournament, me and Josh, and we had a draw. Like we had a position where none of us could really win, to be honest. And I offered my hand to him and said, "Do you want to draw?" And he was like, "Sure, why not?" That's draw by agreement, pretty much. Draw by repetition is another way you can draw. Essentially, if you reach the same position 3 times, like the exact same position on a chessboard 3 times, then it's a draw, pretty much. So, I don't really know how to explain it, like, but if you reach the exact same position 3 times, then it's a draw, I guess. I guess that's the only way to explain it. And there's also a rule in chess called the 50 move rule. Essentially what that means is that if all of your pieces have moved, but there's been no captures or attacks or checks, with checks? Or a pawn move, yes. Then...
And checks are fine. You can check as much as you want.
Oh, checks are fine. Okay, never mind. I didn't know that. But if you've moved all your pieces 50 times and there's been no captures, then the game ends in a draw, pretty much. This usually happens in the endgame, but like I said with you before, like if there's like no chance of it being winning, or if like both players know if it's a draw, then they're gonna like agree to a draw, pretty much. Does that make sense? Yeah? Oh, just a reminder before that, like in beginner games, it's probably not going to happen, to be honest. So if it does happen, then congratulations, I guess. It's not something that happens often in beginner games, but you know, it's there. Like, it's just a little bit of information if you needed it. And there's another thing called stalemate. So essentially it's kind of similar to a checkmate. Remember how I said that in a checkmate it has to be a check for it to be a checkmate? So essentially, stalemate is kind of the opposite of that. Pretty much what it means is that if your opponent is like not able to make any moves at all, then the game ends in a draw. We'll get on to like examples of that because that seems like really strange, like explaining it. But I promise you, we'll get into like a position. Like I'll show you a diagram of like what that means.
It's also why you should like never resign when you're a beginner because this happens all the time.
Yeah.
Like half the game.
Yeah.
When you first start out.
So like I said here, it's usually seen during the endgame because in an endgame there's not that many pieces left on the board. So, like you said, in beginner endgames, it's kind of likely that a stalemate's going to happen. So never resign. All right. If you learned one thing from today's lesson, that's to never resign. All right. Anything can happen in a chess game. So try not to stalemate yourself, I guess. The way to do that is like every move that you have, try and figure out if your own king has like a safe square it can move to, pretty much. I'll explain it a bit more later with like proper examples. So this is an example, yeah, right? This is what I was talking about before. So in this position, none of the pieces can move, like none of the black pieces can move because these pawns, they move towards the first rank and they can't because it's blocked by the king. And this king over here, I don't know why it keeps, okay, never mind. But anyway, this black king, it can't move anywhere because if it moves anywhere, it gets attacked by the king or the queen. So notice how this isn't a check, right? So this queen or this king, oh, not the king can't check another king, but this queen can't, it isn't checking the opponent's king. So it's a stalemate rather than a checkmate. If this queen was here, where the blue dot is, that's a checkmate, right? Because the king would be in check. So we have another example, activity. Stalemate, checkmate, or none of them. Essentially, I'm going to give you a position. You guys are going to say if it's stalemate, if it's checkmate, or if it's none of them. Or if it's just a check. I don't remember if I did that. So stalemate, checkmate, check, or none of them. Stalemate. How come?
Isn't that similar to the diagram we just had?
It is. Yes, that's correct.
Minus the pawns?
Yeah. So what I was trying to get at was that, yeah, it is basically the exact same position, but without the pawns.
Right.
But the king can't move,
Right.
because if it moves, it would get into the attack of the king and the king and the queen, and it's not a check, right?
Because the queen is not in the white spot.
Right, exactly. So this is a stalemate. Well done. That's good.
Thank you.
This is stalemate. Next question. Stalemate, checkmate, check, or none of them? Checkmate, yes.
The top left corner.
Top left corner, yes.
The queen attacks the king.
That's correct. So the queen is defended by the king, and this king can't take the queen, can't move anywhere, and so that's a checkmate. Nice. Well done. 2 in a row. Well done. You're doing well.
I think it was 2 people.
A combined effort, I guess. That is a checkmate. Next one. Check, checkmate, stalemate, or none of them? None of them? You can move the pawns. That's correct. Well done. So the king is not in check, actually. So remember that a stalemate is that there's like no legal moves at all. But in this position, this pawn can actually move, right? It moves towards the first rank. And there's nothing blocking it. There's nothing in its way. So none of them, right? And there's different checkmating techniques. I'm a little bit conscious of the time, so I'm like trying to move quickly towards our like final activity. But there's something what's called a ladder checkmate. So in chess, there's like a bunch of different ways you can checkmate your opponent's king, pretty much. One of them is called a ladder checkmate. Essentially, it's when you have two queens on the board, and you sort of like crisscross check the king, so that like you cut off the opponent's like moves, the opponent's squares, and essentially like it becomes a checkmate. I have it on here as well. It was here, but it's not here anymore. Okay, never mind. It was there. But essentially, it's sort of, I'm a little bit conscious of the time because I wanted to try and explain like on the boards, but we only have 10 minutes left, and I wanted like to do like a 15-minute activity at the end, but it's okay. I'll try and put it back up on here. So remember that in a ladder checkmate, you would have 2 queens on the board, and let's say the king was like over here, for example, right? Essentially, what you want to do is you want to cut off your opponent's like squares, pretty much. So you want to cut off all of these ranks, and essentially you want to try and get this king towards the end of towards the 8th rank, or to the H file, or to the 1st rank, or whatever it is, pretty much. And you want to get it to the end of the board and like sort of ladder checkmate, I guess. So how you do this is that, remember how I said that you want to cut off the opponent's like squares? So I guess you'd move to here, and let's say the king moves here. Then you start the ladder checkmate. So if I move here, that the only squares it can go to is like on this rank, and it would have to be forced up, right? It'd be forced up. So let's say if it goes here, we check, we prevent the king from going this way, and we force it up again, and we do it again, we force it up once more, we move up, we force the king up, all the way until we get to the end of the board, and that is checkmate, as it says nicely over there. Because essentially this queen over here, that stops the king from moving back down the board, and you've always got one queen that's doing the checking, and another queen that's like stopping the king's escape squares. I'm very conscious of the time. I'm really sorry about that, but there's another one called a back rank checkmate. So you saw that before, in the examples we had before, where essentially it's basically when your opponent is a little bit careless of what the king is doing pretty much, and the king is literally blocked off by its own pieces. It can't escape from a check by this queen because, because like it can't move anywhere. It's stopped by its own pawns. And I did want to show you guys again, but I don't know if it's up here or not. Again, it's gone, so I can't show you one here. Like, it was here, like, an hour ago, but it's okay.
I believe you, don't worry.
Thank you. But essentially, like, if you can see that if your opponent's king is, like, sort of stuck behind its own pawns, and you have, like, a rook or a queen that can infiltrate the back rank, so the 8th rank, then great, you know, that's a checkmate. And there's also something called a smothered checkmate. This is really nice. This doesn't usually happen in that many games, but it's very nice if it does happen. Essentially, it's kind of similar to a back rank checkmate, except like the reason why it's kind of similar is because the king like is like suffocated by its own pieces. So remember before that it was like suffocated by its own pawns. In this case, it's suffocated by its own pieces. And it only happens with a knight, because knights can check like over pieces. It can attack over pieces. So in this position, this king literally can't move anywhere. Even if there was no knight over there, like if it was here, for example, where my blue dot is, this king still can't move. But because it's under attack as well, it's now a checkmate, right? It's, as it says, it's suffocated in its own pieces, all right? Again, I would show you on the board, but it's okay. For our final activity, is it okay if you guys can stay for like 10 minutes additional? Is that okay? You can leave if you want, it's okay. But if you do want to stay, then you're more than welcome to. Essentially,
Thank you so much.
thank you. But essentially what we have here is, I've told you guys before that there's like so many different types of checkmates. We only have 45 minutes, so I can't really explain all of them. So I'm like giving the ropes to you guys. Essentially this QR code, it takes you to a link that shows you like a bunch of different checkmating patterns. And what I wanted you guys to do is like sort of work in pairs, I guess, and try and like learn a couple of these patterns by yourselves. And then at the end of the session, I want you guys to like sort of present it on the board. All right? So 5 10 minutes, you become the teacher and you teach the class about the pattern you learned. And I've got sort of like leading questions over here, or guided questions that you can use to like try and teach the group what pattern you learn, I guess. There should be 36 patterns in there, so hopefully none of you guys like overlap or like do the same one. But obviously if you do the same one, you know, you do it in groups, I guess. But yeah, if you do have, thank you, I appreciate that. But yeah, if you do have somewhere to be, then obviously you're more than welcome to leave. I know it's like already 8. But yeah, you guys can like get out the boards as well and the pieces, and like try and learn it from there.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Thank you so much for coming. I'll come over and like try and help you guys as well if you want it as well. Hey, you learning something now? Yeah. Have you thought of which one you want to do so far? No? There's 36 of them in there, so you can pick any of them, I guess. And then you can use the questions to try and figure out how to teach it, I guess. actually wanted to come to the give it a go session.
You should have.
No, I was so
It
ill
was
though.
really well attended.
I know. I saw the Instagram. They were so
Yeah.
good.
I was actually really surprised to see that many people there.
Because my friend went last year and he said he loved it.
Did he go very much?
He like went towards the end of last year. He graduated last year.
And was he a physics student?
He wasn't.
I know he is okay about.
Yeah.
I was so
Do you know
Yeah.
George? Yeah, exactly. He was a regular here at chess.
I became a regular at the end of last semester.
So I was ill last week, so I couldn't go. I didn't want to give it to anybody.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think
It's like damn
it's
sick.
quite close. Maybe you could come to one of the sessions.
Yeah.
You have to pay though.
Oh,
So,
Like, it looks so interesting though, you know?
it's fun. I like it.
What kind of salsa do you do?
We do I think Cuban salsa. But I'm not that good. So.
What
was you?
I did the Cuban salsa. Not last. Yeah, in spring of last year.
I can bring it over to you.
Looking at this.
I came to. Sorry. I don't know. The class was really late at night, and it was like long to get to and long to get back. Yeah. Do you have like the
Try and use the questions as well.
It's pretty.
It's brilliant. If you want to do it again, just check me back.
Yeah.
You should check me back. I never do it on time.
No, it's 2 minutes. No, you can put it under. Can you can't but it's free.
I wouldn't even know. I was gonna kill my own pause.
That's why it was.
Even like when you're in tech sometimes, like chess.com will tell you why you don't get shit.
Oh, literally, I think I got like a chess
If they go up,
and I was in check and I couldn't tell. I was just checking.
And you
Yeah,
can
but it wouldn't let me.
no, yeah.
I just sat there like 5 minutes. I was like, why isn't it this?
Yeah,
check?
you've just found a little bit.
Tech, I feel like an actual game of
But
Pokemon,
they,
Yeah, I just at least.
Did he tell you about events manager?
just do like
I
this.
signed up before.
I signed up.
Okay.
It's okay.
It's refreshing.
I
I just got bored of that.
I've done a couple. I joined the
I made,
American Football Society. So that's been
in addition,
That's like the first time I've done that.
so I put social media
I
and
went to the
obviously
Society.
in case,
Mhm.
That was pretty good.
and I just put it in case someone else wants to do it.
Yeah.
What about yourself?
But like you don't know.
There's also like what's it?
Well, you don't have to fill all
And
of those
like
in, so it's just like the main
Like,
things.
I don't know
Person
what it
being
was
treasurer,
called.
basically.
Yeah.
Equestrian?
The questions that
Well-being.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
that's
a good one.
I don't think that's actually a course session because I'm doing one of my course, but
I think they probably have.
yeah, that's
Make
what I'm
it
saying.
so.
And then I think I'm gonna try out Leicester Society, but all of the
I mean, I'm
different
gonna vote
course
for
sessions like.
elections. I don't
Oh my
think it's actually
God.
anyway. So I think it's probably
I
best
think
if he
what it is,
doesn't.
I don't think that those sessions have like gone, so I will have to.
He's already admitted to me that he's not going to do it.
Gosh.
He's like, oh, I probably didn't not do a lot. And I'm like, okay, Nick, I'm not voting for you.
I mean, to be fair, I thought I wasn't gonna be able to work this year anyway. Like, I thought I was just gonna do all the stuff for summer and be like very chill.
Yes.
This is really been that chill.
I've been trying to say project.
Is it chess?
It's okay.
Make sure it's a
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but the chess gambit is like. I mean, sorry, the Queen's Gambit is like it's a good show.
Tell him just
I like it. I think it's just. Okay, but
I never played it before, so I was like,
Oh, I made thinking furniture as well. It's great.
but is this the point?
I saw it too.
Really,
Because he's
like,
amazing.
this one, this one.
And it's women's officers.
okay, so if we go
I
there,
don't know if it's true, but that's good.
Like one second.
I guess.
If you go to.
Someone else to do it.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
She
can't be a committee member.
Yeah.
we're not.
What if she's so new?
That's why we
Yeah.
we can't hold
No, but if you.
Because
Yeah, that's what I meant to say.
Unless it's doing
Okay.
her cards don't work.
I mean, I didn't
Like, she could. Why would she be able to
I
not?
just sort of played a lot.
Yeah, she's got better things to do. So see what
Yeah, you feel.
she doesn't. Okay.
She's eventually just like,
No, she went to a chess club.
Yeah.
There was like Norman Murray, there was, I know like,
No, I use my, I love
Yeah.
the night one.
And
I
it's
use
like,
it.
you can
No,
kind of
don't
like,
use it.
practice playing them.
Yes.
It's always a good way to sort of
I don't know.
over against with.
Oh, I keep it. I just
Like
have my
physical
bishop.
boards was
Same.
better.
Bishop goes like this.
oh, did you put the board, is this the boards?
So my
Yes.
bishop, I
Yeah,
don't
I think
know.
so. Crowd attention, we can take them
I
back.
have
Say
a real
online,
thing.
you know,
I'm
it shows you like.
yeah, for example, there was one time.
Which one are you guys doing?
The opera.
The opera mate, okay. Try and teach me.
But then
Oh, so
Well, not like,
if you playing with
not right like up there, but like you can teach me now, I guess.
following the rules.
so
Here,
research.
just-
Yeah,
just-
that's
So
true. That's
basically,
true.
how we explain it is white
But if
means
you
you just go
come
here.
to the
Nice.
society, you play on the boards.
you're in
so
check.
really,
Yeah.
you're not as society
You
members
can't
will be
move
there. So
here.
Yeah.
You can't move here.
Yeah.
yeah, you can play bishop around.
Bishop can take it and
Oh yeah.
yeah,
I was gonna see why I can do that with this.
the bishop, yeah. Oh, nice.
Fair enough. Okay.
Where on the board does that happen?
And then
Like where on the board?
Oh, you want us to like name it?
I guess, yeah.
it's like PhD next one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to happen there, but like,
It's like
Here.
it's not like
I just made like a random, yeah, I guess, yeah.
I'm curious,
Yeah.
how does one get in
No,
this?
definitely. It's
Because
a steep
I'm
learning curve.
confused how the book works.
These points don't have to be here, right?
No,
And these pawns have
Yeah.
to go.
Yeah.
But this one has to be here, so that you see what's
so you lots of kind of
This
like
has to be there. One of this can be gotten and then.
This one has to be there.
here,
Yeah.
Yeah, this should be like.
Actually, no, it doesn't need to be.
I've learned how to play for a channel, but I don't like to play it. So it's new how to play it.
Because it can't move here anymore, because the rook will still take it, and it's not possible to do.
Yes,
Does
that's
that make
how we
sense?
work.
Yeah. It's just like different patterns, there's like different ways of positions.
How many have you memorized?
How many have I memorized? It sort of just happens.
You don't think, oh, we're doing this.
No, not really.
Yeah, because sometimes I plan to do something. and it
I'm not
doesn't
sure
follow.
what it would
When I used to say
cost.
this,
It's around like
this,
700.
when you look at the
So not great.
I actually
Like the whole point of this exercise was like trying to find different patterns. Like chess is all about pattern recognition. Everyone thinks it's like, oh, memorization, but like learn everything. It's people don't know how to defend against it, then you can like bring the queen up, bring the bishop up, right? And people might fall for it, you know?
There's a way
Like if they know the proper defense,
Yes.
it gets refused very easily. Then you'll move back here, and they're still attacking. They're still trying to figure that out. Yes, that's good. Nice. That defends the point.
It is a bit, yeah.
That's good.
There's
Nice.
a lot to remember.
You can try and figure out another one as well if you want. And then
I'm trying to get just a feel for it after a while.
you can also see what you agree. Have you got one that you learned so far? So you got one that you learned so far? Yeah?
Which one?
Very consistent and very slow but consistent.
Yeah.
It's that one.
No, that's good.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
So where can you move right now? Nice.
Nice.
Kind of like Aladdin did, right?
Alright. So if you guys want to come up as well, we'll do it on the board. Yeah. You guys can set up the guys, if you want to set up the boards like for each checkmating pattern that you learnt, then you're more than welcome to. Obviously, you don't have to. You can we can come around and watch it on the board. No?
All these things for Friday.
Yeah. I feel like I think we have to meet before.
Yeah, fair. Come again?
It's freaking fun, man.
So heavy. It doesn't feel it. When you first lifted it was more heavy, but then when you walk it for 5 minutes.
We can all come around and watch you guys explain it if you want, or you can do it on here. As in we can all. I was saying you can set it up on the board.
on the actual.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, to be fair, there are.
You've already set it up, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah. If you want to come sit over here as well.
How do you gather around?
What's your name, by the way?
Rayan.
Rhea.
Rayan.
Rayan. All right. Teacher Rayan. Teach us. What is your
the
check?
opera?
Okay.
The opera check. So obviously white to move, you just move to d8, and then your king can't go down because the bishop.
Mhm.
It can't go here because the rook.
Yeah.
So
Nice. Well done.
thank you.
Okay.
We like the name of it. The
Yeah,
opera check.
I like the backstory to it.
That's good.
But we still don't understand how this would actually happen.
I was saying to you guys before, it's just like pattern recognition, to be honest. Like you're not gonna play a game and think, oh, I'm gonna go for an opera checkmate, you know. It's sort of if it's on the boards, it just happens, you know. Nice. Well done, guys. Next one. Anyone want to go next? Anyone want to? Did you want to set up the boards? Okay.
assume that you just
Yep,
do that.
that's correct.
And then will your queen go here? And on the picture, it would be put the knight here, and you can take the pawn here, and it's checkmate because the queen is protected by the bishop, and the king can move anywhere.
That's correct. Nice. So this is a very nice trap in the opening that I was going to teach you about in a couple of weeks' time, but you taught us already, so that's great. Essentially, like you said before, that this bishop and the queen, they all work together to try and attack this pawn over here, and this king can't move anywhere because anywhere it goes, it'll be attacked by the queen. You all need to try and figure out a defense for that, because if you guys are all beginners, I'm assuming, because you've come to the beginner lesson. So people are gonna try and do that to you in the opening. They're gonna be like, oh, they're this many rated. We can try and go for a scholar's mate, but try and learn a defense to that. I'll try and explain it to you now actually. So this was here, and that was there. Yep. Sorry, I'll come this way actually. Sorry. So this is number 4. So e4, e5. Queen can go here if they defend whatever it is. Bishop here. Essentially, remember what you're trying to do is you're trying to defend this pawn. Rather than what the picture says was to attack the knight, but attack with the knight to the king. You don't do that. You defend this by
Like any queen move is good, or because you have to defend your own e-pawn as well.
yeah.
So not
Why is my mind blanking?
because you
this
wouldn't-
is
because you don't play e5, so you wouldn't get this. I also play the c5, so but the more common one, you get it from. So I can't quite use it. You get the same sort of idea. Can you put the and then the bishop here, and then here some move like this blocking the bishop is a more normal way to do it. It's the same idea. If you play e5, you have to put your queen in an awkward square, which is why on the second move probably don't put your knight here. You're going to play 45. But
basically trying to defend that f7 thing. So
yeah,
this one by either blocking the bishop's sight on it or just protecting it with the queen so that it doesn't happen.
you can play knight h6 as well. But
Yeah.
it's awkward
Okay. I don't know why my mind blanks. This is
because you never get it.
this is something I learned day 1 of chess, but I don't know. But it's okay. But yeah, that was solid, mate. Well done. Did you want to put it on the board as well? What you learned? You learned something that I've never heard of until today, actually.
Then the queen can't move either side, no one can't move up or down. Yes, chessmate.
That's good. So, what was it called again? Sorry?
The corridor check.
The corridor checkmate, yes. I'm assuming because the rooks at the walls of a corridor, and then the queen checkmates the king. Nice. It's sort of like a ladder mate, but in the middle of the board, I guess. But yeah.
About the ladder mate,
Yep.
how are there 2 queens on the board?
So at the end of a game, not the end of the game. Essentially, in an endgame, if you have a pawn that can reach the end of the board,
Yeah, and
You-
you can just swap it.
you can swap it for a queen, pretty much. You can swap to any piece, but ideally you'd like to swap to a queen because it's the most powerful piece. So that's how you get 2 queens.
You can also land it with a queen and a rook.
Yeah.
The same, literally the same idea. So if you have something like this, you just check, and check, and check, and mimicking this stuff. And it's exactly the same as if you had two queens. Or you could do it with two rooks as well.
Any other questions? No? Yeah? Okay. Well, thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it. And I'll do the formal thing where I show you the presentation. Yeah, thank you all for coming. I appreciate that, you know. So next time is next week as well. Hopefully we're in 207 again. But we'll talk more about the endgame. So like a bit more theoretical next time. But yeah, thank you all guys for coming. I really appreciate it.
When are you planning on doing like king and rook versus just king?
Next week.